Hey guys, and welcome back. So today I have some really exciting news. As you can probably tell by the title of this video, this week, well last week probably, by the time I upload this video, so I'm really sorry that it's going to be late, but basically on the 25th of January 2017 I finally passed my driving test. Now this is probably like my biggest achievement, probably more so than getting a degree and more so than anything else I've actually ever done, because this is something that I really set out kind of to do for myself. I knew that it would give me so much independence, especially living in such a rural area like I do. Driving is just pretty much essential, so I started learning to drive in September 2016 and January 2017 I've passed, which I kind of started learning to drive around a similar date in September, so that's kind of October, November, December, January, 4 whole months of learning. But my kind of experience learning to drive wasn't the most smooth, I would say. I watched so many YouTube videos to kind of inspire and understand how other people have got through the process, because when you're starting to learn and when you're taking tests, it doesn't feel like it's achievable, it really doesn't. So I watched so many different YouTube videos of people basically talking to camera just like I am today, which really inspired me to make this video, because I really wanted to create something that I really liked when I was learning to drive, so it's nice to kind of do that full rotation. So I've made a couple of notes on my phone of things that I really want to talk about, but like I said, my experience wasn't exactly the most smooth process, and it's quite, I don't know whether it's realistic, I kind of wanted to say realistic because it's my experience, but it kind of helps to give you an idea of how it could end up, I suppose. So yeah, I'm just going to get straight onto this video and just share my learning to drive and my passing my driving test experience with you. So keep on watching if you are interested to find out more. I guess even prior to even getting in a car, I'd had no experience of being or driving a car before. Learning to drive was completely new to me, and it was not something I'd ever done before. I know a few people who have had a little bit of experience, or if you've kind of had a motorbike license, you've got experience of being on the road, but for me it was completely new. When I was trying to look for an instructor to learn with, I literally said to myself, the first person that I inquire with that gets back to me is the person that I'm going to go with, because I have like different shift patterns at work. I don't have certain days off all the time, so I needed someone that was quite flexible, and I also needed someone that could do Sundays, because I would have before had lots of Sundays off, because before I could pass my test, buses and Sundays are not the best mix. So that was basically essential, and the instructor I went with was basically the first one that said, yeah, I can do those days that you've said, this is my prices, very like transparent from the start, and I'm really pleased that I learnt with him, because he was very like easy to talk to, and for someone to actually teach me how to drive is a pretty difficult task, because I know nothing about cars, I know no mechanics, I just do not know anything. All I know is what I learn, so it was really good to have someone that was very patient. And what I liked about my instructor basically was like having a dad teaching me to drive, but my god, I would not have wanted my dad to teach me how to drive, because I would have probably driven him crazy. I guess the best thing to start off with is the fact that I would usually pay in sets of 10 lessons, because I knew that I needed a lot of tuition to learn, and not only learn how to drive but learn to become a good driver. So I paid for 3 lots of 10 lessons kind of after each other. So I had 30 solid lessons, and then it was after kind of 30 hours driving that I was kind of confident enough to book my driving test. Now I know that quite a lot of people claim to have a lot less hours or have a lot more, but it totally depends on the person, and do not judge yourself on your ability to drive by how many lessons you're having, because I know someone that's a friend of mine that had claimed to have had like 6 hours driving tuition before he passed, whereas I know other people that it just takes them a long time, and I'm not ashamed to say it took me ages to learn to drive. So basically I had 30 hours before I booked my first test, and between kind of deciding that I was ready for my test, it was almost a month later. So I had kind of different lessons in between just to keep me going, to like make sure I didn't forget anything, and just kind of good practice. When I was learning, I was kind of having 2 2-hour lessons a week, because I really wanted to get my driving license as soon as possible. I know that's not obviously ideal for everyone. I know people that have just 1 hour a week and they learn to drive absolutely fine. So again, it totally depends on you. I had two-hour lessons a week, and that was probably for the first 30 hours. And then I'd break them up. So I decided to have them once a week. So by the time my first test came, I think I had probably 40 hours of driving lessons in total. Now, obviously, I didn't pass my first test. I had, I'm just going to talk to you basically how my first test went. I wasn't very nervous actually for it. I was feeling semi-confident. Obviously, I knew that I had failed before the end of the test because the examiner did put his foot on the brake. The reason being was because I was around, we kind of, obviously, no matter where you are, you have like delegated test routes. And this was one that I wasn't very familiar with. Whether we had actually gone down it and I couldn't remember, it was maybe the case, but we was kind of in an unfamiliar road for me, and I was stuck behind like a lorry, and my examiner told me to turn right, and the lorry was also turning right. So I didn't see that there were traffic lights on the other end. I thought it was just kind of like a cross junction, and I went to go right behind the lorry, and obviously I should have waited for the lorry to have gone, kind of sussed out the road, stuff like that. So I totally accepted why I failed the first time, but it was quite good because I only did get 7 minors, so it made me feel really confident for my second test. The manoeuvre I had the first time was a 3-point turn, which is actually my favourite manoeuvre. Like, still to this day, it's the one that I'm most confident in, and I don't see it as a manoeuvre, I just see it as kind of a really easy way to turn a car. So I was really pleased with that. I had a really good route. I kind of was told to follow a route that I had done millions of times in my independent drive, but I just knew that I had failed when the examiner put his foot on the brake. Anytime they do that, it is an immediate fail. So no matter what you do after that, you know that you failed. So at least I kind of knew that I'd failed, but I wasn't too broken up about it. I kind of thought in my head, no one really passes first time, and obviously if you do, then you're an amazing driver or really lucky. But in my head, I kind of knew that I wouldn't pass first time, but I really wanted to do the first test, so I knew what to expect for the second time. So even though I was probably not 100% ready for it, I probably wasn't as good of a driver then as I am now. It was quite good to kind of tread the water, and although booking tests are expensive and generally learning to drive is quite expensive, if you can, I would always recommend doing a first test and in your head thinking maybe this is just like a mock exam or a mock trial, because that's how I went into it. And so I wasn't disappointed when I had failed because I kind of expected it, in all honesty, but I thought I'd give it a try and it would help me know what to expect. Between then, I then obviously booked my second test, and there was probably about 3 weeks between the two, so I had a few lessons in between those, and then obviously you need to pay for an hour lesson before your test, as well as the hire of the car if you're taking your test in your instructor's car. So the second test that I took, I actually thought was the best of the 3 that I had done. The reason being was that I felt like I was still quite confident. I still had the confidence of kind of my first driving test. I went into this one really wanting to pass because I didn't want to have to do it a third time. And what was disappointing with this one is that I truly believe that I didn't fail for a reason that I could have controlled. And the reason being was that we were heading into a roundabout. I was scheduled to turn left. I was waiting for the traffic to go on, and the roundabout in Devon, it was kind of, if you're on the right lane, you could still obviously go left because they're not in the same lane as you. So I obviously knew that going into a roundabout, and a woman was on the right lane, and without signal and just very kind of sporadically, she just moved lanes into left as I was about to kind of go into roundabout. It wasn't at that point where it's okay to move. She did just manically turn the steering wheel and go into the other lane. And basically my examiner beat me to the emergency brake. Obviously I was about to do it, but I felt like because my examiner would have had years of driving experience, he probably could know what to do in that situation probably half a second before I did. But I just knew, again, my heart just sank because I knew when he touched the brakes it was an immediate fail. But the problem was is that I only got 4 minors during that drive, and that was just really, really like annoying. And especially as two of the minors were for my parallel park. Still to this day, I do not like parallel parking, but I had that as my manoeuvre, and 2 of my minors were for that. So for the rest of the drive, I only got 2 minors, which was so frustrating because I felt like, first of all, that situation was one that obviously you can prepare for it, but at no point, like, I was only going to have to brake, and my examiner just literally beat me to it, and I was so gutted. And when he told me that I'd failed, obviously I knew that I had because he had put down his brakes, but I did just kind of like well up, and I got a little bit overwhelmed because I just thought, you know what, like, that really freaking sucked, because I thought that went so well. I was so confident during the drive. The problem was is that I had the same examiner for the first 2 tests, and I feel like he has a tendency to put his foot on the brake, and I was just praying that for my 3rd test I didn't have the same guy. And I was saying to my driving instructor, like, I swear to God, like, I felt like he had it in me, and I know that that is ridiculous, and of course they don't. They just want to make sure that you're a safe driver for when you are on the road, because as soon as you do get your driving licence, you don't need to do a test again. So it's better that you are as safe as possible, but I just really felt frustrated that that situation was one that I couldn't control, and it just, even to this day, I know that I've still passed, but I really felt like I should have passed to my 2nd attempt. But obviously I got the news that I had failed, and then I had work straight after my driving test because I would kind of change my shift to a later shift so I could do my driving test in the morning. And between finishing my driving test and then going to work on the bus, I booked my 3rd test. You have to wait 10 working days before you can book your next test. So for me, obviously, basically that means 2 weeks because weekends are not working days. So pretty much 2 weeks from that day, you can book it. So I had that on the Tuesday, and then you can only obviously do it 2 weeks after that. So the 2 weeks Wednesday was when I had my 3rd one, which was last Tuesday. And I was so nervous. I was shaking. When I got in my instructor's car, when he picked me up for the hour before, I just was like, I'm so nervous, I'm just so worried. And he was like, don't be, obviously you can drive really well, your 2nd test went really well. He did kind of propose that I could have appealed my 2nd test if I wanted to, but I was so lucky that where I am, that it just so happens I could book a test much quicker than the appeal process. And because there is only 1 test locally, I felt like making an appeal would just make it longer and harder, and obviously they know that you've appealed their decision, so that never really helps. It's like questioning a teacher's authority. I don't like confrontation, to be honest, and I would have rather have just paid the extra, even though it was a lot more, to just take another one. It just seemed quicker, and I couldn't be bothered, if I'm all honest, to dispute it. And because they don't have like dash cams, it's one person against the other, so I just didn't really understand how I could have won in that situation. So I just went ahead and booked another one. I just thought, you know what, move on. I'm, again, like I said, not for confrontation. So I booked it as soon as I could book another one, which was really good, and I was really lucky that I could do that, because probably like a year ago there was like a 3-month waiting list for every driving test you took in my area, so I was super lucky. So like I said, I had a different examiner which made me feel at ease already, but again, I was super nervous, like in the waiting room when you're waiting for the examiner to come out and call your name, I was just shaking, and my instructor was like, just calm down. Like, even my hour before, I was making loads of silly mistakes, like I was forgetting to signal, all stupid things like this that I've never done for like the past 10-20 hours of learning to drive. I just kept doing because I wasn't thinking straight. I just was a little bit all over the place, and obviously we were sat in the waiting room and my instructor was like, come on, just take a deep breath, like calm down, like you can do it. And I was just honestly so nervous that I felt like then that I was going to fail because of my hour before. It just, again, just totally knocked my confidence. But I had a different examiner come out, and immediately that made me feel a little bit better. The examiner that had failed me twice already also came out but called the other guy's name, and apparently my instructor said the relief on my face when he didn't call my name was just hilarious. So I don't even doubt it either, because I just thought, if I have him again, I just know the situation. We got in the car, they normally say, do you want us to talk about how this is going to work? I kind of said, it's alright, like I've done this before, like it's okay, I understand what's going to happen and the fact they stop you and you have the independent driving and all stuff like that. So off we went. We had a few of the, well actually when you come out you have to read a number plate, then you have the 2 show me tell me questions, get in the car and then you drive. So I'm not going to bore you with like all the different routes and stuff, but I went a quite nice route. The only problem was is that it was really glary, and I was at one set of roundabouts and there was traffic lights and I could not see the colour of the traffic lights because of the glare, and I was voicing this because I was really concerned that I was going to fail on it. And then I kind of was like, right, it has to be green. Always vocalise. If I wasn't sure, I'd always say it out loud. So the examiner always felt safe and I wasn't kind of making a random decision that made them want to put their foot on the brake. That was my biggest fear, was the foot on the brake situation. We did this, it was absolutely fine. The drive was okay. Like, it wasn't a route that I'd been on before, but again, as you take it road by road. The funny thing is, every time I had a test, my driving instructor asked me what route I went on. But because of how much I was concentrating on the road ahead, I cannot remember. And even now that I'm kind of out of that state of panic, even looking back, I still cannot remember what route I went on. It's like, I know main elements, but I don't know exactly, which is just really funny. My instructor was like, you're the only person that's kind of ever said that. And I was like, soz. My manoeuvre on my third one was reverse around the corner. And although it wasn't my best one and I'd got a minor for it, it was okay. I wasn't worried about that. It's kind of the parking ones that always kind of throw me off a little bit. So I was absolutely fine to have done it. And I got 6 minors, which you get on your sheet. And when he said that I had passed, I was like, oh my God, like I started crying. I was just so overwhelmed because I honestly thought I had failed. I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to do this a 4th time. And I always took the mick out of my mum for the fact that it took her 4 attempts to learn to drive. So I kind of didn't want to do that, obviously, and I think the more tests you do, the more nervous you become because you start doubting yourself. And my advice is just always be confident, even if you think you failed or if you know you failed, just keep being really confident with it, because that was my biggest downfall. I made a few minors which were just because of my lack of confidence in my drive, whereas I probably would have ended up on around 4 if I had been just a little bit more confident, kind of a little bit more sure of myself. But when you failed a few times and you fear the words of sorry you failed, I just had it in my head that I was going to again. So when he was like writing my certificate, I was like, oh my God, and I was so excited. My instructor was kind of by my car ready for the debrief. I didn't have my instructor in the car of any of my tests. I feel like that would have just been too off-putting. But he was next to my car, obviously, for the debrief, and he'd said that I'd passed. He went through a few things that I got minors for, and just things just to make sure you look out for when you do drive. But I was so excited that I kind of like flattened my arm. I don't even know how. And I somehow hit the horn, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But I was just so excited. And it's, like I said, this piece of paper is probably going to be my most treasured piece of paper ever. He obviously filled out this certificate and then asked me if I wanted to send off my provisional licence there and then I get my new pink one in the post, and I'm really excited for that to come because I feel like I've been one of my only friends that haven't learnt to drive yet, and I'm 22 now, and I do wish I had done it before, but then again, now is a good time because I know that I can get a car and insure it and go, whereas if I'd learnt when I was 17, even though it would have been probably a lot easier for me now, kind of getting a job a bit far away from where I am, because the commute on a bus is an hour and a half each way to work, whereas now I've got a car, it will take me like 45 minutes, and it's a huge difference. I kind of wish I had done it when I was 17, but then again, if I had lived in London for 3 years and then got a car, I feel like I would have had less confidence. And for me, it's all about kind of being confident, being able to do it, and just the sheer determination to learn to drive was just my biggest driving force. And when you have to get a bus that takes an hour and a half each way to work, there's no more motivation than that. So yeah, that's pretty much my driving experience. I can't really think of anything else that you kind of really need to know. All that I would say is just be confident. You know what you're doing. If you had booked your test and your driving instructor didn't think you was ready, he would say. So just kind of go into it and just think, I can do it. And if not, it doesn't matter. It's not like A-levels where you have to like pay to it again or you have to wait a year. You can just book it again. So yeah, just keep at it and just don't give up, because I honestly was saying, like last week before my driving test, I was so nervous and I was like, I'm going to fail again, like what are people going to think? And in all honesty, nobody really cares. It's for you to do and it's your personal experience. So honestly, do not worry about what people think, whether that's by how many lessons you're having, by how many tests it takes you to pass. Just do it at your own pace and just know yourself. Like, you know if you feel ready to do your test, and you know if you're not, if you kind of want to practice other things again. And always check kind of the waiting time for tests, because obviously if it's like 5 months wait, then you'll want to book it in so by the time you reach that time, you're ready to do it. But your instructor is the best person to ask any questions for. But if you do have any questions that you feel like I might be able to help with, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm just so pleased that I have it, and for me it's just a massive relief that it's over and I can just drive a car now. It's pretty unreal as well because I don't have a car to immediately drive after. Now I'm just waiting to get one, and it's kind of like, oh my god, like I'm gonna get a car. It just feels really surreal, and it feels like the biggest achievement ever because I can just get in a car and I can drive it, obviously insure it and whatever, and I can just have so much freedom and I don't need to be restrained by public transport. And yeah, I'm just so happy. I can't still believe that I did it, and that's the biggest thing. It's just like self-relief. It's amazing, and I just feel like I've really achieved something. So yeah, I would definitely recommend learning to drive if you haven't already, or if you're really nervous and really anxious to start. I was as well. I was like really nervous it was going to take me really long and I just wouldn't get it because I'm not very technical at all. But you can get there eventually, just it might take time, but as much time as it needs to take, it's better doing it than kind of just putting it off because you'll only make yourself more nervous. I hope this video has been helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if it has helped you at all, or if you've got your driving test coming up and you're a little bit nervous, do let me know because you'll honestly be absolutely fine. I really promise you, and I'd love to know if you've passed your test recently as well. And yeah, I hope you have a great time learning to drive or just driving because you've passed your test. Really hope this video has been useful, and I'll see you guys next week for another video. Bye guys!